Welcome back. Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of the Everybody Eats podcast. It's your host, Bensky Belazaire. We got Edom Ekpe here, and we have a really special guest. We got a really good one for you today, Mr. James Young. So thank you very much for joining us today. I look forward to having the conversation.
Thanks, Bensky, for having me. I appreciate it. And Edom.
For sure. So before we start, make sure that you like, subscribe, share with your friends, like and subscribe our videos on YouTube. Make sure you're sharing. We're giving out free games, so make sure you guys are doing that on our social medias: Instagram, everybodyeats.pod, Twitter, EBEpod. So make sure you like, subscribing, sharing, and all that good stuff.
Tongue twister.
Yeah, tongue twister, right? And again,
I was gonna have to write all that stuff down.
I say it a lot, so I get used to it. But again, got a shout out to Sosa for the Everybody Eats merch, right? So we got them embroidered Everybody Eats shirt. So we've been displaying them in the last couple of episodes. So we got another one here. So again, shout outs to Sosa for making that. And he made Edom's hoodie as well. If you want to show that real quick. Edom's brother hoodie, right? Embroidered hoodie with the silk on the hood. So, we always got to shout out Sosa for helping out with our merch. All right. On that note, Mr. Young, if you could introduce yourself, where are you from? What do you do? I know you have a really interesting backstory. I believe you say you grew up in Newark, New Jersey. And I know, you have a really interesting backstory. So I know the people want to listen. So if you could get started and we'll keep the conversation rolling.
Well, I hate to start off by correcting you. But
Not
I'm originally from Brunswick, New Jersey.
Okay, there we go.
I used to live in Newark for a couple of years, but I'm originally from New Brunswick, New Jersey.
Got it.
And I've been down here in Norfolk for most of my adult life. So most of the last 30 years, I came down here originally way back in 1988 when I was a young guy in the Navy. And so at the time, I definitely did not think. I thought I was doing my 3 years here and then I was gone. And I actually did go back home. I've gone back home a couple of times, but I ended up moving here and staying here most of my life. So that's where I started. Started in the Navy. And then I went to Norfolk State, graduated from Norfolk State in 1997 with a bachelor's degree in accounting. And I also have a MBA from Old Dominion, which graduated from Old Dominion in 2006. As you get older, you have to think a little bit harder about when you graduated from these kind of things. But right now I'm working on my master's in accounting, which I'm 3 classes away. And so I'm taking 2 of them this semester, and hopefully I'll be able to pick one up in the summertime and I'll be done with that so that I can, I'm going to speak it, so I'll achieve it. But I want to start my doctorate at ODU in the fall. And so when I say my doctorate, I'm having trouble deciding between strategic management and between finance. And so I figure I'll go ahead and do both, maybe.
Okay.
At the same time, one after the other, but we'll see how it works. But I started my accounting career, because that's what I primarily am. Is it okay if I just talk?
Yeah, go ahead.
If you want to interrupt me because I can talk. But I started my accounting career in 1997, worked for Arthur Andersen in New York. Then I came back down here after a couple of years, and I worked for a company called Strickland & Jones, which still exists now, Jones PC Group, but as a smaller accounting firm. So I almost literally went from working for the world's largest accounting firm to working to a very small accounting firm. But then after 4 years in public accounting, I decided to try something different. And that's when I went to Capital Group, which is where we met. And so I worked there for 17 years as a mutual fund accountant, doing all kinds of different things in the financial reporting section for mutual funds. And then now I'm working for CLP Financial Group. I'm the vice president of the accounting and tax division of CLP Financial Group. And I'm also a financial advisor at CLP Financial Group. And I'm what's called an investment advisor representative. And so I do financial planning, I do investment management, and I also can sell insurance and annuities. But then also I run another firm, which is owned by me, which is now branded as CLP Audit and Insurance Company, which is a full service CPA firm through which we do audits, compilations, reviews, things like that. For CLP Financial Group, We also do tax returns, we do bookkeeping, we do all kinds of business advisory services. And that's something that's actually a growing area for right now, business advisory services, because we've done PPP loans and stuff like that, just trying to help people get through the crisis, and helping people in general. I'm a married man, happily married man. I got a couple twins. They're 21. They just turned 21 last week. So I'll just say last week was an interesting week from the parental perspective. You got to learn to let go a little bit. So that was interesting. And just by, it's kind of weird because they're college students and I'm a college student. I'm sure it's like a movie, right? I think it was Rodney Dangerfield or somebody like that. We went back to high school, I think. So, but that's me. And I wouldn't say a nutshell, maybe an eggshell, a little bit bigger than a nutshell.
Got it. That's funny. So, I'm interested. So when I first met you, it was through our friend Candace. I know that she said that used to do a lot of work at NSU, used to do some work at NSU regarding NABA. Right. So Edom and we were part of NABA, so we always shout out NABA. I'm interested. Were you a part of NABA when you originally at NSU, or was that something that you got into like maybe during your professional career?
Yeah, no. So I was in NABA when I was at Norfolk State. So before I went to Norfolk State, I went to 2 different community colleges because I moved a couple of times. And I first joined NABA in Norfolk State, and then I think I stayed in NABA like the first year after. But after that, I didn't participate in NABA for a really long time. So probably almost 20 years, I didn't participate in NABA. And then I guess I just kind of got the bug. I think what happened is I got to a point in life where I started wanting to do more different things, right? And one of the things that I guess this is where it really started, right? I was interested in why there weren't more African American males at Capital, right? And so I actually went and I talked to somebody, and the answer they gave me was basically that they would interview people, and a lot of them just didn't make the cut because it wasn't like there was none, but a lot of them didn't make the cut because of cultural fit issues, right? Now I always like to joke because here in Hampton Roads, and I'm not sure about the other part of the county, but I was the first African American male in the Fulton County Department there. So we joke sometimes about they're phasing us in, right? It's just a joke, so nobody get mad if somebody's watching this. Nobody get mad. It's just a joke. You know me. I guess if you're watching this and you work at Kaplan, you have a sense of humor, right? So I'm just but there are others, now obviously there are others, right? But when he said that to me, cultural fit, I see some merit in that, right? In the sense that, a lot of us come from backgrounds where we've never been exposed to professionals. And so maybe we don't necessarily know, when we go to an interview, we don't know that we're presenting a certain image or not, right? But then on the other hand, it's a very subjective concept. What does cultural fit really mean? And sometimes you can have like a pre-existing bias that makes you see something that's not there. It's almost like if they don't act the way you expect them to act, then you're going to take an opinion about that. And so what I decided to do is I wanted to work on those kind of issues. And so I wanted to go and work with young African Americans to help prepare them to avoid that cultural type scenario. So when you went to your job interview, you get yourself ready for, to be able to even get an interview. But then after you get the interview, when you get there, you conduct yourself in a way that's unimpeachable. And you don't give out any kind of signals or anything like that where somebody might be able to judge you in that way. You can be whoever you want to be when you're outside of work. That's your business, right? And I mean, actually, I'm not necessarily, I've changed over the years, like we talk about where I'm from, so obviously I didn't grow up speaking the way I speak now and things like that. But you have to model yourself a certain way, conduct yourself a certain way when you're in that environment. And so that's how I got into NABA. So I went and I started working with them because I know when I was in NABA as a student, we didn't have a lot of contact with the professionals. And that's because I didn't realize this at the time, but the professional chapters very highly concentrated in the Richmond. And down here in Hampton Roads, there wasn't really one. And, we've tried to work on that in the last, before the pandemic hit, we were working on that. But that's how I got into it, trying to serve that role. And so I do go to campuses. Even before I got in with NABA, I would still do things on different campuses as far as speaking and stuff like that. But right now, I'm for the whole state of Virginia, I'm the professional liaison for the student chapters, but I'm not very good at it because of the pandemic has completely thrown me with that kind of thing, because it's like I'm more of a, a lot of times as older people, we're contact people, and so I don't think I'm doing very well right now. So I think I still have the job, but that could turn out to be different, right? Maybe I've been replaced and just don't realize it. Yeah, I'm being honest, right? But yeah, because I think that's very important that, people, for one, you have to be able to believe that you can do it, right? And there's a perception out there that you can't do it, especially for us men, right? That you can't do it. And I read a book, I don't think I have it here, but it's like the history of African American CPAs. And, quite frankly, there was a time when we couldn't do it because they wouldn't let us do it, right? And even when we were in situations where we were legally able to do it, or able to do it without prejudice crushing us, it was hard for us to sustain it because there weren't a lot of clients for us to work with. Like a lot of African American CPAs, this is one of the things they used to have, is like they still do, like the experience requirement. And because, even you get through school and graduate with an accounting degree, it was hard to meet that experience requirement because you couldn't get a job. And then trying to be an independent CPA was hard too, because there weren't a lot of Black-owned businesses
that would do business with you.
Yeah. And so that's something I've been trying to work on. And here, now that I'm working at CLP Financial Group, which is a Black-owned company, most of our clients are also African-American. And so that's it's just natural. It's not necessarily something that, like when I go to work every day, I don't say, oh, I'm going to work because, I want to help necessarily build up a Black community. It's just that that's what my clients are. And so it's like, I don't even have to think about it.
Yeah.
Because everybody that I help, 90% of them are African American.
Yeah.
Right.
You centered your work around that kind of.
Yeah. And so that's where I am, which is unusual for me because most of my career I've spent working in predominantly white establishments.
Yeah.
And so now this is actually the first time I've actually worked in this environment. And so it does have that added impact that, on the one hand, I'm making money, but on the other hand, I'm actually helping a lot of people that are like me and that are, I'm trying to build up our community at the same time.
No, definitely. I think that's amazing because one, I didn't know a lot of that. That book sounds really interesting. Yeah, so just a couple points. One, you kind of said something, you said kind of like preparing students, to get into that interview process. The first thing that kind of came to my head is sometimes like you don't know what you don't know. It was like, for example, like myself, just as an example, before joining NABA, like interview skills, resume skills, all that stuff, I had no clue. You know what I'm saying? Like I didn't even realize that I didn't even know what that stuff was. I didn't know like certain terminology. I didn't know even like dress code, right? Like I just knew like what a suit was, but just, just simple, like how to prepare yourself and how to present yourself. So that's one reason, obviously, I love NABA because it prepared me. But, again, like if you don't grow up in that type of environment, if you don't have those type of mentors, if you don't have those type of companies coming to your school or what have you, you're not going to know, so even if you are presented the opportunity, like say maybe you do get that interview, I guess that's where you say maybe that like cultural incompatibility or whatever you want to call it, because you may not, even though you may get your foot in the door, so to speak, you still may not know how to, I guess you could say present yourself, that's kind of like, so.
Yeah, and there are tells, and it's not even just for, it's not even just African American students, because it's really about where you're from.
Yeah.
College student, right? You can be a European descended person. You have those same issues because everybody in your family is blue collar.
Yeah, true.
Yeah. And so you're the first one to go to college, and then you have those same issues. And sometimes you're right, you don't know, you think you're good. There's a picture of me that I took when I was in the Navy, but I had on a blazer, right? I went over to the exchange and I took a picture because I had, and when you're in the Navy, you do a lot of things you wouldn't otherwise do because what else you gonna do with your time and money, right? I just said, hey, I'm gonna go take a headshot, right? And so I took a picture and I got a brand new suit jacket. It was a blazer, right? At least I knew not to wear a suit jacket. Oh, maybe it's just luck. But in any case, I'm sitting there and I still got the picture, right? I'm sitting there, I'm looking all fly and everything, but I still have the label from my jacket. Because I didn't grow up wearing suits and I didn't know you're supposed to
take it off.
I'm highlighting. I'm sitting there showing so everybody can see it in the picture. And 30 years later, it's funny,
Yeah.
but I'm sure some people look like, this guy has no idea what he's doing, And so you don't want to walk in an interview like that, So that's one of the main things that we do in NABA when we're trying to prepare students for the interview. But because, we have that big conference every year, we're trying to prepare you so don't do this. This is what you do, this is how you conduct yourself. And sometimes even when a lot of times, especially for younger people, right? Because I see it with my kids, and I was the same way when I was younger too. You're not supposed to do something, but you either don't realize how prominent it is that you're doing something wrong, and also you don't realize how unacceptable it is. So you might know, it's not ideal, but it's not a big deal. Like for instance, that you go to a job conference and you're wearing white socks with your suit, right? You're not supposed to wear white socks with your suit. But you don't know how huge of a deal it is. You're like, why is that a big deal? I got on white suit. They should not hire me just because I got on white socks. That's what you're going to say to yourself, right? Whereas the recruiter is going to look and say, that guy has on white socks that's crossing my leg, right? But you don't realize that's going to be the impact. You're like, I got on white socks. No big deal. I got a 3.5 GPA.
Not dress.
It's those little things. Yeah, it's like,
Did you ever find that during your years working with NABA that it was always a cultural fit, or was it, sometimes you just say there's that bias every time?
Oh, so you asked me just not within NABA that there's a problem, but just the time I was working with NABA, did I realize that was the issue?
Yeah.
So when I was a teenager, when I was in college, no. When I was a student, I didn't realize. Like I just was thinking, and I still believe this to a large extent, that we just are gradually increasing our participation in these things, right? And that over time it will get better. And I still believe that because it's been true. But then when I, started thinking about what is it that is the obstacle, that's when I decided to go back to NABA. And originally, to be honest with me, I started thinking about creating my own organization first because NABA wasn't really in Hampton Roads as much from my experience, right? But then I said, well, I guess I just, from time to time, I had played with rejoining NABA. But like so many other people, I look and say, oh, I got to pay. That's an obstacle for some people, right? I got to pay. But then I'm thinking, if I'm talking about creating my own organization, why do I look at NABA again and see how they're doing? And to be honest, when I joined, the people that were running the program were really doing a good job. I mean, I think when I joined, the people I worked with the most was Andrea and Christine. I don't want to put their names out there, I guess, but they were doing a great job with the students. So that just inspired me, like, this is the right thing to do. And I just wanted to do more. Still don't do as much as I would like to do, but it's more a factor of how much time I have to do certain things. I mean, because I belong to a group of different organizations. So I can only devote so much time to NABA. But when I saw the program that they were running for the students, I was impressed at that point. I wanted to help them because, I mean, they can't be everywhere. There are only so many people. I wish I were half as good as they are, or as they were. But that's what I was trying to. They were already focusing on things that I wanted to focus on. So it's me just seeing that I could do the work that I wanted to do through NABA instead of even trying to go through the process. My own thing. They've been supportive, as you guys know, because like I said before the pandemic, we were starting to have meetings here in Hampton Roads, and we had a significant, chunk of people that we had attracted here in Hampton Roads, and so we were making traction. And so hopefully, when the pandemic is over and we can start having face-to-faces again, it'll be better. Like I think, if you're an existing organization, you can do well using virtual and things like that, but I think it's hard to build something from scratch. And that's kind of the phase we're still at. It came for us locally at the wrong time. But I think afterwards, we can probably still get back to that. It really should be two phases of NABA, right? One is the professional and one is the student. I think they were doing great at the student level, but here locally at the professional level, we still have to.
No, definitely. I definitely look forward to it. I remember that one happy hour we had at Waterside. Just like meeting people from Richmond, they came down just for the night. So I was like, oh snap, like they really care. Like it's not a quick drive. So I definitely remember that. So I look forward to it, you know. And like you said, like most of it is located either like DC, Richmond area, you know, either Northern Virginia or Richmond. So Hampton Roads, we do have, you know, HBCUs, we have Hampton, we have you know, NSU, we got OD with a big population. So there's definitely a lot of work that can be done down here. So I definitely look forward to it.
Yeah, and that's good because really what I realized about these type of organizations, they're only going to be so vibrant if it's just, you know, older people, you know, to really have a really good experience, then you're going to need to get the younger people involved.
Yeah, for sure.
Because people my age, you know, are not necessarily going to go out to happy hours and, you know, do all these social events. And a lot of times it's the social cohesion that drives the professional development, which is another aspect of it, and the networking event, because that's a lot of it, just getting to know different people. And so I'm glad to hear that you guys are interested, because you guys are really, it's like your level of participation is really what's going to drive it. I can show up to everything, but it's not going to make a difference.
Definitely.
I put you guys on spot where I gave you a task.
I remember, I think you gave me one like when you were back like around when we were doing that happy hour. You're like, yeah, like I'm definitely looking forward to you to, like, you know, I'm telling you pretty much that, you know, you're gonna be your. I was like, all right, well, I guess that's
gonna work. It's the only way to keep it sustainable. You know,
Yeah.
Otherwise you have an organization and you have a great program when you have certain people there, but then as soon as those people transition into something else, then the program dies off. We see that happen at the student chapters all the time.
Yeah.
You have a set of great leaders and the chapter is very vibrant, and then they graduate, right? And then the next group of leaders maybe aren't as good for whatever reason. The participation in the result.
You ain't gotta tell us.
Yeah.
You ain't gotta tell us. Oh man.
Well, for sure. So the last thing on this segment I want to talk about, I noticed you have a lot of certifications, right? So I'm kind of interested, is that something that you do for fun? Do you enjoy these certifications, like, you know, going to school, that education part, right? So on your LinkedIn is James Young, CPA, CFA, CMA, MBA, CSCA. I don't even know what the CSCA is, right?
Going for the alphabet, bro.
So I'm interested, right? So you have all these, you know, certifications, all these letters. So I definitely, like, you know, admire you for that, because, you know, like, I know that's not, you know, something that I'm willing to do. So I'm interested. Is that something that you enjoy doing? And you just said you're trying to be Dr. James Young in a few years. So is that something you enjoy doing? Is that something, are you like looking to chase something, or like what, I guess, like what is the story behind that?
So yes, I am actually one of those people who just loves to learn and to read, right? Funny to me, it's funny now, right? But I'm actually a high school dropout, right? I dropped out of high school in the 10th grade. And I literally used to skip school and go to the library at Rutgers, right? I got a Rutgers campus all day long right now. I'll go in and out of the library studying and everything like that. So even when I wasn't in school, I was always studying. Right? I like to learn. I like to read. I've read, I can't even imagine how many books I've read. I probably read like about 20 to 30 books every year, right? So that's just me. I like being in school. I like taking different classes. And getting a credential is really a great way to learn something, right? And then you get take the test, because the test focuses you. You get the material, it focuses you. You have to study, because once you pay for the test, at least for me, I might fail it once or twice, but I'm going to succeed. I'm not going to start on something and then not finish it in that regard, right? Wait, I just said I dropped out of high school. Anyway, right now. So, but then what I also try to do is all of those are related in some way to things that I want to do. And so let's go through them, right? So the CPA, obviously, as an accountant, that's like the top of the profession that we all want to get. Right? We all want to be a CPA because then I'm almost like a sovereign citizen within, the accounting world. And so that's, that was almost natural. Then the CFA is the Chartered Financial Analyst. And so that's focused on investing and finance, and, anything in the investing world, economics. I always wanted to be, when I was younger, I thought I would be either an investment banker or a portfolio manager, right? That's kind of what interested me in going to Capital Group, right? And also going to New York and work for Arthur Andersen. Those are the kind of clients that I had. And so I always thought that one day I would segue into that environment. And so when I got to Capital Group, they said, hey, they pay for the CFA. I was like, well, if it'll help me to achieve that goal, I'm going to go ahead and go for it, right? And so I got it. It took some time. The first few years I didn't, mess with it all, but then eventually one day I said, you know what, I got my MBA. I'm going to start the CFA. I'm always talking about, so let me go ahead and do it, right? And then once I started, I was going to finish it, even though I never got to use it, on the assumption that even if I don't use it at Capital, one day I'll be able to use it, somewhere else. And it turned out to be true, because here with what I do now, you have to get certain series licenses to, sell securities and advise, do financial planning and all that other kind of stuff. And so I came to a realization last fall when I was speaking to Mr. Leonard Parson, who's actually the president of this company, that we were talking about the series licenses and things like that. And I was preparing to take those, and I came across a rule that said, if you have the CFA in Virginia, you don't have to do those series licenses, those exams. It's automatically exempted from it. You just have to go ahead and register. So we ran that past compliance, and they're like, yeah, you're good to go, right? And so that kind of helped me segue. So even though I had it for all those years and didn't know if I'd ever get to use it, it was useful to me. So I'm glad I got it and had it in my back pocket. Then the CMA, which is a certified management accountant, it's like the non-public version of the CPA. Like CPA is for public accountants, and certified management accounts for accountants that work just for one company, say, rather than work for clients. That was actually something that I got into, I guess because it was there, and it was like just, I wanted to go and learn all the different material, and so I did that. And then the MBA, just something that, when you go back and want to get a master's degree, I didn't want to get a master's in accounting at the time, because I said I'll never use it. I have like a 4-year accounting degree. I have all this experience in accounting. I have a CPA. Why do I need a master's in accounting? And so, but instead, the MBA, it helps you move up the management track, run companies and things like that. And it gives you a much wider field of learning. And so I took that instead. And that's been helpful too, because really I was able to get into teaching because I have the MBA, because you have to have a master's degree. And then there's the CSCA, which is Certified in Strategy and Competitive Analysis. And that is something that's done by the Institute of Management Accountants, and the same people that do the CMA. So it's kind of like a follow-on credential for that. And it's all about strategic planning and implementing strategic plans, right? And so all of those things actually have a lot of overlap in them, but there's also a difference, to each one of them. And do I need them all? Need is kind of, subjective, right? But I can honestly say I use them all where I am right now today in this job for my clients. And so I offer my services to my clients. When someone comes in, I have a client that I'm meeting for the first time, or maybe even meeting another time, I'm talking to them not just as an accountant, but I'm talking to them, from the financial aspect. I'm talking to them as their business advisor. If they have, I was talking to a young lady a couple of weeks ago, and she was asking me some questions that had nothing to do with accounting. And I was able to, give her a give and take, because I know what she's talking about, and I have some insight to give her because of some of the other things that I have. And so I think all those credentials have helped make me a much more rounded practitioner, even though probably my main drive in getting them was more for just my personal enhancement. I'm actually working on one right now, which is a certificate in performance management, which is from the CFA Institute. And what that is all about is evaluating and picking investment managers and choosing which manager you want to go with, and deciphering why different investments perform the way they do. So we all know you can look at a mutual fund, and mutual fund's going to say, this mutual fund went up 10%, this mutual fund went up 11%, and S&P 500 went up, 9%. Well, this certification is all about evaluating why there are differences between the two, what drove them. Was it just the manager was lucky, or was it because he invested more in this type of security and things like that? And so I may not get to be a portfolio manager, even though I guess I am, because I actually have a couple of clients that I invest their money for them. I guess I am a portfolio manager, just not for the big, mutual funds that I envisioned I would be for. But I'll be skilled in hiring and firing them, which I guess is kind of what I do, because as I'm managing my clients' money, I'm picking between funds, right?
Yeah.
So, there's a lot of initials there, so you should have known that was going to take a long time today.
Yeah, no worries. Because again, like I haven't heard the story behind all of them, so that's good to learn about the different, the different tracks, the different tracks.
And like we talked about earlier, I have a plan to keep on going. So
yeah, definitely. So you said you're working on another master's on accounting now, and you're working on that doctor. So all power to you, man. Like I definitely admire that. Because that's not something you see every day, that's not something that you see all the time.
I'm gonna tell my wife that you approve, even if she's a little.
Got you. So on that note, we'll segue into the second segment. Edom, do you have that quote for us?
Okay, I hope I didn't use this before. The quote is, "Pay attention or pay for people's mistakes."
Ooh, no, you didn't use that before.
All right.
Say it one more time.
Pay attention or pay for people's mistakes.
Any hints?
Song lyric.
Song lyric.
The performers from Brooklyn.
I don't know.
Jay-Z.
Really? No.
That sounds like
something deep enough that he would say that he would.
Yeah, right. That's
a line.
I don't know. Is he alive?
Sure. Yeah, he's alive. Yeah, he's 25.
You said what?
I said he's 25.
Joey?
So yeah, he's alive. No.
Not Joey?
Close.
That's a little unfair.
Man.
Close.
Nick Caution? No. I don't know.
Kirk Knight.
Close. Can you say it one more time?
The quote is, "Pay attention or pay for people's mistakes."
Pay attention or pay for people's mistakes. The first thing that comes into my head, that there's a video of it's an old speech by Louis Farrakhan, and he's saying, like, when you see others, he's like, when you see others fall, or when you see your brother fall, don't laugh, learn. Look at the cat, right? Shout out to Yadi. But yeah, so like he says, like, when you see your brother fall, don't laugh, learn. To the fact that he feels like, because the same temptations that make them fall, you're not free from those temptations as well. Something to that point. So that's kind of like the first thing that kind of comes to my head. Like, it's not necessarily a lot of people kind of feel like, oh, like, let me make my own mistakes. And I feel like that works in some instances where it's like, all right, you need to have that experience, but there's also times where it's like you can learn from someone else's mistake, and like you don't have to do those same things that they did. Like if you clearly see, they went down a certain path, or they did something that like didn't work out, like you don't have to go and do the same thing. But yeah, that's the first thing that came to my head.
I think I feel like I came up with this quote because I told myself it before I even like heard it anywhere else as a young kid. But I put my own twist on my mom and my dad used to keep saying, what was it? A smart man learns from history, but a wise man learns from others. So in the sense that you know, if someone's gonna learn from, you know, history or their mistakes, right? I'm just gonna learn from what they did, and then I'm just gonna, you know, avoid that. So if someone hits a pothole in front of you, swerving the other way or something, yeah. So that's just how I view the quote, which is, you know, it's kind of the same thing. So
Yeah, I guess for me, it must be the accountant, the accounting training in me, the auditor, because what I heard you say was pay attention or pay for others' mistakes. And so
ooh,
I'm thinking like if I'm not watching what somebody's doing, they're gonna rip me off or they're gonna do something wrong, right? And so I'm thinking like if I have a young person working for me or something like that or subordinate, and I'm not paying attention to what they're doing, then they make a mistake, I'm going to suffer consequences because I'm supervising them, right? Or if I'm doing business with somebody and they're giving me a proposal or something like that, and I don't necessarily look at it as closely as I should, and there's something wrong with it that I should have caught, then it's going to blow up. And I mean, I can give you some examples from my performance reviews that would be applicable to this quote. We'll leave that out of there for now, but that's how I kind of saw it. Like, if you're not paying attention, you're going to miss something that could have an impact.
Definitely perspective, right?
yeah, it's a definitely different perspective. He actually got literally pay, which is kind of funny.
Definitely. All right, so if you could say the quote one last time and say who it's by, and then we'll go into our final segment.
So the quote is "Pay attention or pay for people's mistakes" by Kirk Knight, from the song Last Choir.
Got it. All right, so
is he a rapper? I just assumed he's a rapper.
Yeah, he's a rapper. Yeah.
Do they have like regular singers that come from Brooklyn?
I can't name any offhand.
I'm trying to think. I don't know.
Well, Mary J. Blige from Brooklyn? Or is she from Queens?
I can hit Google real quick for you.
To the Googles.
Actually, let's just forget that I mentioned her. You can edit that part out because my wife is probably tired of hearing me talk about Mary J. Blige.
Yeah, they don't.
She's from the Bronx.
She's in the Bronx.
Oh.
Okay.
From the Bronx. Close.
Yeah.
Close. All right. So for our final segment, I kind of want to talk a little bit more about the business, your personal business, and kind of about taxes. So kind of like now that I'm just thinking about it, tax season is coming up, or it is now, right? So like, all that paperwork is starting to come into the mail. And I'm starting to think about a video I saw on Instagram, thinking about what happened?
On what?
Oh, Instagram.
Uh-huh.
You're not that old. Come on. You're not that old. Right. So I saw a video on Instagram that was kind of like highlighting the different like tax benefits between like LLCs, C Corp, S Corp. So I don't know. I don't necessarily want to put you on the spot, but if you have any, tax advice that you can kind of give, because I know definitely like in our generation, you see a lot of, at least for us, like I'll see a lot of posts like, oh, create an LLC. This is how you file the tax. But I feel like a lot of people will say just create an LLC, but don't necessarily give you the details on how exactly those work when it comes to filing and things like that. So if you kind of give some any advice or any tips you can have, or you have with like filing like LLCs, maybe like sole proprietor. I know you say you have a DBA, so I know it's a lot, but any advice that you can give, maybe most important advice you can give, especially with tax season coming up.
Yeah, so it's hard for that question, right? It's hard to give and I've answered that question in other venues as well, right?
Yeah.
And the answer is it depends, right? Getting an LLC is a good thing to do, right? Because it helps you with liability. And so a limited liability company, that's what an LLC is. It protects you if your business fails. You will be less likely to lose your personal assets because of it. right? So let's say you guys are working at LLC and you run up some bills, and then the LLC can't afford to pay its bills, and so um, you go out of business, and you leave some creditors unpaid. And LLC will help you, so that they can't necessarily come after your house and stuff like that. Now that's a general rule. I'm not going to say it applies to every situation, obviously, because some of the letters, like there's no JD behind my name, right? I'm not a lawyer, but in general, that's what an LLC does. Yeah, right. I've actually thought about it. But as I've gotten older, the ability to get the money back that you have to invest in it is not there. I'd had to work pro bono almost, right? But people misunderstand, thinking that just getting an LLC helps you on your taxes. It doesn't. An LLC, depending on how the LLC is structured, you have options to be treated certain ways. But let's say you're an individual working and you're the only owner of the LLC. It doesn't do anything to your tax situation versus you not having the LLC. You're in the exact same situation. And so that, I would say, a lot of times people don't understand what an LLC does for you, right? That's one thing. But then in the context of all the other ways to organize your business, that's where the "it depends" comes in. Because in some instances, depending upon your personal situations, it may be better for you to be an S corp. It might be better for you to be an LLC. It might be better for you to go ahead and get a corporation, right? Corporation. But unless you take and sit down and think about what your plans are, what your probable outcomes are in the near future, it's not really proper for someone to advise you to do one of those things versus the other. There's some ways, that you can save taxes if you do one thing versus another. If you get some cases, if you're an S corp, you can save on self-employment taxes, but there's rules around that. It doesn't work for everybody. Sometimes if you go get a corporation, especially now, because now is a very interesting time where corporate tax rates are lower than the highest individual tax rates. And until the Trump law in 2017, that wasn't the case. So there's some interesting probabilities with that now, but that's likely to change. And so you have to take all of that into consideration before you even sit here and say, for any individual, do one thing or the other. And so that's why absent a conversation, like I can give a class on it, what the differences are, but in this shortened environment, I wouldn't want to get too much into the details because somebody might hear something and say, oh yeah, that's what James said, so I'm going to do that. But there's just too many variables, that impact that's around that. And I see too many people doing things that are not, they think it's right, but it's not necessarily the best. So I kind of shy away from giving that.
Got it.
I actually never knew that if you're the only, like you said, owner or worker of said LLC, that doesn't do anything. And that's actually something they don't tell you.
Yeah, because
they don't tell you.
At least I know I hear a lot like, oh, if you have an LLC, you can write off all those like business. Like I guess one of the benefits is like you can write off those business expenses. So lowers your tax bill, or like, when you have an LLC, yeah, pretty much like I guess like the profit or loss can be like applied to your personal tax statement. So I feel like
without being an LLC, you get that same function. I think what people are trying to do in that context when they say that, what they're trying to say is you should be paid, try to get paid as a contractor, right? And so if you get paid in the environment that we're in now, employees can write off nothing, practically, right? And there's exceptions to every rule, but practically nothing. And so think about it, you're working from home, you can't write that off because you're an employee. But if you were a contractor, you're a sole proprietor, you're a business, and so you can write all that stuff off. If American Funds was whoever was paying you, right, then you can write all that stuff off. But if you're an employee, you can't. I think when people in that context say, oh, become an LLC, I think what they're really saying is, if you're an LLC, you can make a better case that you're an individual business person versus being an employee, but you don't have to be an LLC to be a contractor. Being a contractor is really a function of the job that they have you in a situation, which is a whole nother half an hour conversation. But that, I think, what they're going after. And so that's really what my advice is to people that are considering those kind of things. Make sure that you understand what you're doing, the rules that govern what you're trying to do, and also what the true benefits and disadvantages are. A lot of times people misunderstand what they're.
Got it. Yeah, we actually maybe we might have to do a class breaking that down. I think that would actually be very, very beneficial.
Yeah, there's a lot to talk about in that area.
Yeah, maybe
And
I don't
here in
know.
Virginia, they just actually tighten up the law a bit, because whether or not, like, some people think it's interchangeable, like the employer can decide if somebody is a contractor or an employee and just pay them a certain way. What the law actually says is you have to judge by your circumstances. And so the employer can change the circumstances, but they can't just make an arbitrary decision. And in Virginia, they just made that a little bit more critical, because now they're going to start applying fines for people that are calling people contractors that are really employees.
Got it. So if you're a contractor, wouldn't that, I'm not too well versed in that, but I'm assuming wouldn't that be up to yourself? Or again, are you saying that would depend on the type of work that you do?
Yeah, you can't just say, "Oh, I'm a contractor." Like, if you're really an employee, there's an actual fact pattern that has to be evaluated. Now, again, just like the employer has certain things that they can influence, so can you.
Yeah.
If you come in and it's hard to make someone be an employee that doesn't want to be an employee, right? Because one of the things that that decides if they're employees, how much control they have over it, right? For instance, if your employer can tell you what time to come to work and what time to leave, you're an employee, right? But if that's just one factor, there are many factors, right? But if you can just come and go as you please,
You're a contractor.
you're a contractor. So that's like one of the big things, like when you're talking about Uber and Lyft out in California, trying to make them contractors, or trying to make them employees, right? But if you're an Uber driver, you look at your phone and you see, oh, they got some work. They're trying to get, somebody needs a ride, to such and such a place. An employee is got to go get that guy. A contractor will look at his phone and say, oh, somebody got a ride. It's only $10. Where's my other beer? I ain't going to get that. Employee, do you know they can do that?
Yeah.
Right? Contractor can do that. So that's something they can influence in their negotiations before you start the engagement. But once you're in it, you're in it. And there's different. That's just one factor. And there's many ways to look at it. But you as yourself can't. You can go and say, hey, I want to get hired. I want to be a contractor. But you have to act like one.
Got it. Okay. So I guess for the sake of time, because now you just got me thinking, right? So we can't, you said it's going to take too long to kind of get in depth of each one, but would you be able to, I guess, like list off the different, if someone wants to start a business, right? I think this might be educational, right? If you could list off, I guess, the different type of structures
Sure.
that you can list, you can structure your business as.
Okay, so you can be a sole proprietor, which means basically you go out, you start your business. All you need to do to be a sole proprietor is say, hey, I'm in business. You're a sole proprietor, right? You can go then and be an LLC. To be a single member LLC in most states, you just go register online. Costs you $100, $200 in your LLC. You can go into business with other people, right? And so going into business with other people, you're either going to be a partnership, right? Or you could be a multiple member LLC. Multiple member LLCs, most of them are just simply tax-like partnerships, but you can be a partnership without registering. But to be a multi-member LLC, again, you have to go through that process of registering. Then you get into the more stricter corporate forms where you can be an S corp. So an S corp kind of has some aspects of a partnership and some aspects of a corporation. Right? It's called subchapter S of the IRS code, and is limited to certain people, certain types of people, certain number of people. So it's almost like they're just trying to give smaller corporations the pass-through benefits of being a partnership, right? And then there's a corporation. You can be a single owner corporation. You can be a corporation, like that's owned by millions of people. But you have to go through and set it up. And when you set it up, basically what you're doing is you're creating an independent entity that is a legal person all of its own.
Mm.
And so you own it, or whoever else owns it with you, but then it's like a separate person. So that gives you even more protection, for as an owner. But it also comes with the double taxation issue, where the corporation files a tax return and gets taxed on its income, and then when it pays out income to the owners, they get taxed. Whereas if you're a partnership or a sole proprietorship, single member LLC, then the income flows through those organizations and basically gets taxed on your tax return. And so those are the main differences and the main forms. There are a few others that are similar LLCs and partnerships that most people will not, have to deal with. Mostly like professionals, like doctors and stuff like that.
Got it. Okay. So we have sole proprietor LLC. So partnerships, S corps, and corporations. All right. So we got a mini class. Class going on. No, definitely. So yeah, I mean, I feel like maybe we'll talk about it after, but maybe we could do like a mini series or something, like going through that. I think that would be definitely be beneficial. We do have a tax professional in a few weeks who's going to be on our podcast too. So I think it's good to get that information out there. So your personal tax business, right? If we could talk about that a little bit. How did you start that? When did you start that? And if you could kind of like speak to that.
Sure. So basically, a few years ago, I started what we would all call a side gig. And it started just because someone that I know asked me to help them set up their QuickBooks. And so I did that. And then he was like, well, I was thinking because I always said I would set up a company one day. It was always a goal of mine to, be a partner in a CPA firm and all that kind of stuff. And so when I started doing that, I was like, oh, maybe I can start, doing stuff on the side. And the guy said to me, he said, well, you'll send me an invoice, right? I was like, yeah, I'll send you an invoice. I guess I got a company. He was like, well, I'm your first client, and he's still my client. And so I started just doing taxes on the side, but eventually hoping to grow into something different. And I actually now have it. It's still in operation. It's like a full service CPA firm. So we have a firm license that we can do audits and reviews and compilations. A lot of people don't know, and I see a lot of people abusing it. In order to do audit work, attestation work in Virginia, you have to have not just a CPA license, but you have to have a firm license, a firm CPA license. And a lot of people don't have that because they don't want to go through peer review, or maybe they can't do it. But we can do that. And so with that gives us here at CLP, we have, between the two entities, we have the ability to do anything that any CPA firm can do, as long as it's within our capabilities. What I mean by that is we can't do work that we're not knowledgeable enough to do. We have to know the industry. We have to be able to complete the task. But legally, there's not anything that we can't do that a larger CPA firm can do. And then in addition to that, we have the financial advising side and all of that as well. And so that business now has been open for, I guess, probably about 4 or 5 years now. And it's just rebranding now as CLP Audit and Assurance Company. Legally, the name is JYE Financial and Accounting Solutions, which is almost as long as all that stuff you were saying at the beginning of the podcast, right? But it'll be around for a long time. In fact, we're doing more work with that now than we were doing. Some of my capacity was limited, but now, because of the larger marketing structure that we're in, I can do a lot more.
Got it. Definitely. So, I guess my last question now is, how do you manage to do it all, right? So we talked about, right, you have all your certifications, right? Yeah, active. Also you still teach classes at TCC?
Yep.
Right.
Adjunct Associate Professor of Business at Highwood Community College. I'm teaching 3 classes this semester, but they're online, so not as enjoyable, but it's there.
Yeah, so that's still, a lot though, right? So that's still your professor, business owner, full-time employee, and I'm sure there's stuff that you do that we haven't mentioned. So how do you manage to do it all? I guess like what keeps you going?
I guess two things. One is the desire to do it, right? It's passion, and then really, I'm enjoying myself more than I've enjoyed myself in a very, very long time in the work environment. And so I enjoy the things that I'm doing. That doesn't mean I enjoy every individual aspect of it. There are some days when I'm like, oh my God, I can't believe I got to do this. I don't want to do this. But as far as like the whole process, I'm not doing anything that I didn't happily choose to do, right? But I work a lot of hours. I mean, that's undeniable. I probably work more hours than I want to work. But eventually I think I'll slow down a little bit. This is what kind of happened to me. And tell me if I'm where we're at time, right? But this is kind of what happened to me. When I got to be about 40, after all the joking about getting old is over, right? You start to think about, at least I did, the things that I want to do in life and what I want to be remembered for having done. And then I started thinking, well, there are a lot of things I haven't done. At the time, I was just somebody's employee. And it's not a bad career. I mean, I was doing okay. I was financially sound, right? But there were things that I just hadn't done. And so I said to myself, I spent all this time learning stuff. And now all the things that I want to do are about using that knowledge in different ways. And so I set out to do them, and so I started added on things, that I wanted to do. And to be honest, sometimes you add something on that's supposed to be temporary, and then you kind of get stuck in it, You do have to learn how to say no, because there are things that I want to do that I can't afford to do. But you start picking and choosing because I can't add on other things. And I'm hoping that as I move through, I'll get faster and better at doing certain things with the job, build it up big enough that then I can, it'll be more self-sustaining. It doesn't require me to stay here, late at night or whatever it is. And so hopefully it's a temporary thing. But my plan is I'm willing to sacrifice. I'm 51 now. I'm willing to sacrifice till like 60 in order to build something that's sustainable. So that way, when I get to be about 60, then it'll be almost on autopilot, or at least I'm just managing. And I can kind of slow down a little bit myself and just do things I want to do or really want to do. And, but it's going to take some sacrifice. And that's just a reality. Like if you read biographies of people that are successful in life, I mean, they didn't get that way by working 9 to 5 for the most part. People that are successful in life tend to work 10 to 12, 14 hours a day for a significant period of time. And so if you want to be successful, that's what you got to do. And so I still have things that I'm trying to be successful at. I tell my wife when I get up in the morning, I'm going to nurture my empire. That's what I tell her all the time. And that's what I really need. I'm trying to build something. And so that way, when I'm, closer to retirement, I'll never be fully retired. That's not my plan. That's for somebody else, right? Because as soon as I retire, I'll find something else to do, right? But, the plan is to work really, really hard for the next 10 years and then kind of coast until I drop it somewhere. Cubicle, talk in the middle of a speech. I don't know. Something.
For sure. No, I think that's amazing. That kind of reminds me, we had a couple months ago now. She was actually our NABA faculty advisor, Professor Denise Miller. And somewhat similar story. Like I don't want to give out her age, but she's up there and she's still going strong, like
doing
writing
it all.
Yeah, like teaching classes, writing books, taking leadership courses. And I was like, Professor, like, what keeps you still going? And it was a similar response. She was like, there's just things that, I want to do, and it's just never too late to start, and it's never too late to keep going. And I think that's definitely inspiring, especially for like, I think our generation. I was watching a video from Gary Vee, so I watch him a lot, and he always goes off saying how like there's a lot of pressure for like people our age to kind of like have it all figured out now. Like after college, you have to have it all figured out. Like you have to know what you want to do or know what you have to do. And he's like, that's like simply impossible. Like you haven't experienced or done enough things for you to sit here and expect to know what you want to do for the rest of your life or have it all figured out. At 19, 20, early 20s or whatever.
Yeah, it's hard. Like for instance, I don't mind telling people this, but I'm a little bit disappointed in myself because I thought by now I'd be president. You know, I literally, when I was like in my late teens, early 20s, I literally thought that I would be the country's first black president, right? But instead, they went with some other mulatto. So I had to, accept that it wasn't me. But for what we will, because some of us older people, we talk about, older people always talk about younger people. Young people always talk about older people, right? And so there are some things we see about like your generation that are good and some are bad, right? Some of you guys, we give you credit because some of you guys just go out there and you get an idea and you just go do it. Right? There's no hesitancy, about it at all. But what we're trying to do, and this is one of the focuses of our business, is to reach out to younger entrepreneurs and try to help guide them, right? Because a lot of times when you're at that age, you think you know it all, right? Sometimes, see, I'm throwing shade on the younger people, right? You think you know it all, you have a good idea, and you can get into business. But what we like to point out is you have to have a certain skill set also to stay in business. Mm-hmm. And we see that now with the pandemic that we're in. It takes skills. It takes wisdom and foresight also. Because I like to say that this pandemic wasn't unforeseen. We knew it was coming. We just didn't know when it was coming. And we didn't know what it was going to look like. We've had pandemics all throughout human history, and we're going to keep having pandemics. We knew this was coming, but how many people prepared for it? There were some people that were extremely prepared for it, and all they had to do was put their plan into effect. But then there's other people who had good times before the pandemic, but they didn't squirrel away anything. And now they're just as broke as somebody who never had any success. So that's something that we're trying to focus on, is to get people to be more deliberate about how they do their business and get more into planning and things like that. But again, that's probably another whole other episode.
Got it. No, I think that's definitely important. Definitely.
Yeah, I just posted something. You got one more minute?
Say again?
Do I have one more minute?
Yeah, for sure. Sure.
I just posted something right before we came on here. It was just something I was thinking about. It was a quote by Meek Mill on one of his songs, right? It says, "A boss is one who's going to guarantee we eat," right? Mm-hmm. And so I was thinking about that in terms of management, because a lot of times I think when you're in business, especially when you're kind of new to being in business, it's all about self to a certain extent, right? But the point of it was, what I posted was, do people think about the impact that their business has on other people? Their employers, their employees, their suppliers, and things like that, because they're not just the only ones. Like if you're a business person and you got a couple employees and you're doing what you need to do to survive, what are you doing to help them survive too? Because if you think about it, that's what a boss is. You can't just make decisions that are going to help you. You have to make decisions that are going to help everybody. Now, I'm not saying you have to totally, subvert your interest to theirs, but you have to at least think about it and to make sure you operate in a sustainable way. And so that's just something that, just came to me and I was thinking about, and I decided to post something on LinkedIn about it. So you are maybe the first CPA to ever quote Meek Mill. Maybe somebody got to before me, but I don't know.
No, I think that's definitely something good to end off on. But man, on that note, James Young, thank you very much for taking your time out this evening, sharing a lot of wisdom information.
For real, yo, for real.
I definitely learned a lot out of notes. We just may have to do a mini series, maybe on some tax and maybe on some other information, because I think there's a lot we could give back regarding that. So we'll be reaching out. But yeah, and thank you, for reaching out, for being on the podcast too. And it was crazy because I was literally thinking, the week you reached out, I was thinking to myself, I was like, I haven't spoken to James in a while and I want to get him on the podcast. And I was kind of just being lazy. And then I just saw the message on LinkedIn and I was like, oh, look at that. So
that's what's interesting about personal growth, because a year ago, I would have been petrified to do this. And I'm like, I don't know, I want to do that. But, we're all getting better in the virtual world. And I've done so many different things, now online, I'm a little bit more confident in doing it. But yeah, it would have been a total different because I know we talked about it more than a year ago.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah.
and I was like, yeah, I'll do that, but I was shaking in my boots. But that's just in a year, that's personal growth, right? And so it just shows you can always change. If you set out to change something you hate, you can learn to at least tolerate it and do it competently. I assume I did this competently.
No, definitely no. You did an amazing job. You did an amazing job.
100%.
And you're a professor, right? So like you already have those skills. So yeah, for sure. So again, thank you very much. Thank you for dropping those gems. For everybody listening, make sure again you like, subscribe, share with your friends. Follow us on all social media: Instagram, everybodyeats.pod, Twitter, EBEpod. And James, if people want to connect with you, I know you have a LinkedIn, but if people want to connect with you, learn more, what are some ways that people can learn more about you, your company, and stuff?
Sure. Thanks for asking that. So I'll give you our phone number first, 757-366-5242. It says 366-5242. We're located in Chesapeake, Virginia, off of Battlefield Boulevard, but we can deal with accounting issues from all over. And investment advisory issues we can deal with from a limited number of states. So if you're interested in that kind of stuff, just let me know. But our website is www.clpfinancial.com. And my email is jyoung, JYOUNG, @clpfinancial.com. And I'd be glad to hear from anybody.
Perfect. All right. So you guys heard it. You guys feel free to reach out. And yeah, on that note, thank you very much. And we'll see you guys next week.